you. Go ahead, Ms. Keys-Gamarra.
Thank you. I am really excited to have this opportunity and to have this time set aside. And I have to say, I wrote my comments last night. And then this morning, I realized that this is a really significant day in history. Today is the day that Rosa Parks decided she was not going to give up her bus seat one more time. It's also the day that President Lincoln sent his second message to Congress, in which he called for the abolition of slavery and said, fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We of this Congress will be remembered in spite of ourselves. And so it seems like an appropriate day for us to consider really moving forward on the initiatives of equity that all of us have been so passionate about. And I think that this is a real opportunity to do that. So today I am coming forward asking this board to authorize our staff to explore establishing the John R. Lewis High School Academy to focus on leadership, public policy, human rights, and government. Finally, as you know, this idea arose when we changed the name of the school back in July. I mentioned it in my comments. Since that time, those few sentences started a flurry of excitement and encouragement in the community. I heard from students who contacted me and said, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, how can we help you? And I heard from community members who wanted to do the same. And it was all about this guy named John Lewis, because he is a guy that has dedicated his life to the well-being of his neighbors. He thought of others, and he walked in the principles of leadership that did not allow bitterness or fear or timing or when is the time. It never stopped him. He just said, we have to have change. And he walked boldly through opposition, and we are all the better for it. He fought for voting rights and healthcare and so much more. But perhaps most striking was his dedication to young people, because even on the eve of his death, he was out in the streets of Washington, D.C., supporting young people, because he was truly, truly dedicated to that. So this academy, which served to provide the tools to students who seek a life in public service. Ideally, this academy will offer support and training for those who want to follow in the students' footsteps of the pioneer of good trouble. The idea has been like a fire in my belly that I hope will encourage this board, FCPS, our students, and our community. It would serve John Lewis students and be available to other students in Fairfax County. So this is where we are. As I mentioned, this idea came as a result of the name change. I was contacted by students and other members of the community. So here's what I know so far. Since that time, more students have joined the effort, and just a few days ago, they called, even though I didn't think it was necessary, and said, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, we're doing a petition. So you don't have to do that right now. And they said, no, no, no. And just in a few days, they have nearly 200 signatures from students at this school. The same thing happened with community members. And they have petitioned with 345 people in just a few days from their community. There was also a letter sent out by the John Lewis PTA saying, marking their support for this idea. And of course, I have contacted all of you. I want you to know that I too am focused on this board and this system being able to do what it needs to do. And I know that we have a priority on return to school. But I also know that we are in the midst of a time period of momentum that we should not lose. It is time to act on this. So I've talked to each and every one of you and explained to you what my process has been. I've reached out to the magisterial member, and we've talked several times, and she understands my heart. I know that she will make her own comments. I've talked to Dr. Braybrand, talked to all the folks involved within the John Lewis High School. I've talked to Sloan Presidio, who is our new Chief Academic Officer, and we have all been very, very cognizant about what this would mean. And so I believe that under his leadership, we can do this without disturbing our return to school efforts. I've discussed this idea also with local officials and mentioned it to state officials, because the idea is that this is not just learning in a book, but also putting principles into practice, being able to have internships with our local officials, with organizations that are dedicated to change. And our students in this academy would benefit from that. I've also talked to other potential supporters, such as Bob Mitchell, who founded the Bipartisan Leadership Project and has worked to establish a leadership program in colleges in Michigan and most recently at George Mason, and is working with the Carter School of Conflict Resolution. Mr. Mitchell has agreed and offered to help us to set up an advisory committee so that the FCPS won't have to do the heavy lifting. Mr. Mitchell is experienced in establishing these types of programs, and he has agreed to work with our staff so that we will minimize the burden on FCPS. I've also had the pleasure of speaking with some of the folks who actually work with John Lewis. Mr. Christopher Ray, who was an attorney. I sent that letter to you today. Hopefully you had an opportunity to read it, as he pointed out how much John Lewis would really approve of this, and that his network from his fraternity is also willing to work with FCPS to get this off the ground and to provide mentors and serve us in any way possible, because they feel that this is so important. And I've, of course, discussed this with staff, as I mentioned before. I too am concerned about the burden, but I genuinely believe that I've done the work to make sure that this is possible. So I'm asking the board today to approve this forum topic, to allow staff to explore the possibility of establishing the John R. Lewis Academy that focuses on government, public policy, leadership, and human rights. This would allow staff to develop a plan to move forward and report that plan to the board. I ask you for your support, and I thank you for allowing me to take a few extra moments to thoroughly explain how we got where we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, for that incredible introduction. I think we'll start with Dr. Anderson, who has her hand up. Go ahead, Dr. Anderson.
Right, I'm trying to get my mic on. And my camera, I'm a little bit behind here. Sorry about that. Thank you. All right, Ms. Keys